Ara had just fallen asleep on my chest when my phone buzzed on the side table. I shifted carefully so I wouldn't wake her. The screen lit with a text from my mother. I expected something bland, a formula reminder or some link to a trendy Euro parenting piece she thought I should read. Instead, 6 words cut the room in half. We're moving to Barcelona. I emptied the account. I didn't move for a full minute. My body went numb before my thoughts could follow. I opened the banking app and stared at our shared family fund. 0. That account was ours. Mom, Dad, and me. For emergencies, shared care, my sister's recovery. They took every cent. No forwarding number, no explanation. Just that. My breath went shallow. Ara's fingers flexed against my collarbone. Warm and trusting. Unaware 2 people she'd never remember had just made a choice that would shape her whole life. I kissed her forehead and whispered, "Thanks for the heads up." They hadn't even waited for the week to end. I was supposed to watch her while my sister rested after a breakdown in Berlin. No one said how long or that it came with. A vanishing act and an empty account. But nothing with them was ever labeled clearly. I laid Ara in the portable bassinet, her cheeks still pink with sleep. Then I went to the kitchen and pulled the paper files I keep, the ones my mother mocked. Me for printing. The last statement from 2 weeks ago showed over $18,000. I tried calling them. Voicemail. I texted my sister. Read, no reply. It didn't feel like panic. It felt heavier. Recognition. Of course they did this. Of course I was the one left holding the child, the debt, and the silence. The fridge hummed while I leaned against the counter and looked around. Bottles, diapers, her pink sleep sack still warm in the laundry basket. All of it belonged to someone else and was now mine by default. In the morning, I would start knocking. Tasks down, Ara's schedule, legal guardianship. For now, I sat next to her and watched. Deep down, I already knew they weren't coming back. Not for her, not for me. Being the reliable one starts so quietly you don't notice the leash forming. It's picking up my sister from ballet because Mom had a deadline, even though I had a meeting. It's folding Dad's shirts because my sister gets distracted, then watching her distraction get rewarded. I used to think being helpful made me valuable. Dependable turned into invisible. My sister was all fire and drama, tears in parking lots, poems on napkins, a dozen almost majors before settling on spiritual anthropology. People adored her for being bright and messy and unaccountable. My parents loved her like rare crystal, even when she shattered everything. Me? I was the shelf. They called the family fund a shared net. Money from Mom's side hustle, Dad's lecture stipends, my freelance gigs. It started after my sister's second hospital stay, in case someone else needs support. I remember those exact words. Someone else. Not her. Someone else. But I was never someone else. I was the backup system. The first time my sister drained the account, it was a Catskills retreat. Transformative. The second time, a failed move to LA to write a memoir she never started. I was told not to be rigid, that she was trying to become. Meanwhile, I let my car insurance lapse and went 2 years without new glasses. And now they'd left me with her baby, emptied the account, and moved to Barcelona like it was a sabbatical. The silence after that text wasn't just cruel, it was clear. They never planned to come back, not to help, not to answer, not to check. I sat on the couch in the dim room, listening to Ara's tiny coos in sleep, and thought about the last time my mother visited. She frowned at my chipped mug. "You still don't have matching dishes." She said nothing about the handmade tiles I installed in the bathroom or the photos I restored for the Historical Society. Just the dishes. Of course she left without goodbye. That's who she always was. Stable children don't need warning. But Ara would. She needed more than they ever gave. And I was the only one left to figure out how. By day 4, my body had adjusted to 2-hour slices. Ara's sleep was an unpredictable math problem. 3 40-minute naps or 1 long scream from 2 to 4 a.m. Her lungs were strong. My nerves felt sanded down. I worked in flashes, editing footnotes for a regional history journal while she napped on a folded towel beside my laptop. The client emailed twice about the deadline. I said, "family emergency," which felt too small. Every bottle was a negotiation, every diaper a scramble. I bounced her until my arms burned, then rocked her to podcasts in my earbuds to stay awake. Now and then she smiled, gums showing, and it felt like oxygen. Then the crying would return, and I felt myself fade into the wallpaper. Friends texted a few check-ins, a meme or two. No one came. I called my sister twice, left one voicemail. I even typed a third message asking when she was coming back. I didn't send it. What would be the point? Thursday morning, after a night pacing with Ara strapped to my chest while she screamed into my collarbone, I opened the door for the mail and found a warm Tupperware on the stoop. A note in tiny cursive. "You're doing more than enough." I glanced across the hall. Mrs. Arles's curtains twitched. She's retired, lives alone, reads mystery novels with her windows open. We'd only spoken once about trash day. That afternoon, she knocked softly and handed me a folded quilt. "Made it for the wrong-sized bed," she said evenly, like a plain errand. I thanked her. She didn't ask to come in. She didn't linger. It was the first time someone had really seen me in days. That night, under the kitchen light, I held Ara with one arm and ate reheated stew with the other. My arms ached. My chest felt heavier than hunger, but for the first time all week, I didn't feel completely alone. The next morning, I went to my parents' house to find the old folder where they kept legal papers. I hadn't been there since the day they left. It still smelled like lemon polish and overconfidence. I told myself I was there for the last container, a formula or a bassinet tucked in the attic, but I knew why I'd really come. Answers. Or proof. Ara slept in the carrier as I opened drawers slowly. The fridge held imported fig jam and half a bottle of Prosecco. The cupboards were too clean in that particular way people leave when they don't plan to return. In the bottom drawer, beneath junk mail and a broken corkscrew, I found a worn green folder labeled Spain. Inside, printed travel plans going, back 6 months, flights, a Barcelona apartment lease, international SIM cards already activated. It wasn't impulsive. It was planned. Behind those pages was a notarized form. My name, my address, my signature copied from an old lease. Power. Of attorney for the 6-month-old, transferred to me indefinitely. I pressed my thumb into the paper, trying to feel its weight. They made me her legal guardian without asking. No conversation, no choice. Tucked in the back was a bank statement from 2 weeks before they vanished. Withdrawal of $21,600 to a ICE, Private International Division, Offshore. I sat at the kitchen table where they had once hosted faculty dinners and corrected my posture and stared at the numbers. I should have wanted to break something. Instead, I felt still. This wasn't a mistake. It was a trade. They chose freedom and used Ara as the reason. A pan on the counter still had a boutique price tag, $240. They left that too. I folded the documents and put them in my bag, then looked around one last time as if their voices might echo. It was quiet. The quiet didn't apologize. Back home, I opened my laptop and searched how to file for emergency guardianship in Virginia. I expected legal aid to feel sterile and swamped. It was. The lights buzzed. The receptionist barely glanced up. But when Ephraim Rhodes came to the doorway, tie a little crooked, sleeves rolled, he greeted me like a person, not a number. That almost undid me. I showed him what I'd found. The notarized transfer, the offshore bank line, the travel plans. He read slowly, tapped the stack once, and asked, "They didn't tell you?" "No, they just left." He nodded, jaw tight. "This isn't just guardianship, it's likely financial abandonment. Maybe fraud, depending on how those funds were labeled." He explained that while the power of attorney might be technically valid, the deceit around it wasn't. If we could show they planned to offload responsibility without consent or misused shared funds, we had grounds to challenge custody and the money trail. I asked about the process. He said slow, tedious, uphill. I said I'd been up all night for weeks. One more climb wouldn't break me. That afternoon, I began to catalog everything: receipts, screenshots, my sister's old texts asking me to help for the weekend, my mom's money message. I built a spreadsheet. I printed and labeled. It felt obsessive. It also felt like building something solid, one page at a time. 2 days later, my sister finally called. I almost didn't answer, and then I did, wanting her voice on record. "Danica," she said in that clipped tone, "you agreed to this." "No," I said. "I agreed to a weekend. Not indefinitely." Silence. Then a dry, condescending laugh. "You always dramatize. You think they abandoned you? Grow up. They're done carrying you." My hand shook. I steadied my voice. "They weren't carrying me. They were hiding behind me." "You're being ridiculous," she snapped. "It's done. You won't scare us with legal threats." I didn't reply. I let quiet do the work. Then I hung up, labeled the recording, and backed it up twice. That night, Ara ran a mild fever. I held her on my chest, her breath hot and uneven, and watched the ceiling glow with the streetlight. I didn't feel strong or victorious. I just felt done being afraid of them. In the morning, I called Ephraim and said I had something he needed to hear. The message came on a Sunday while I warmed a bottle. "We're flying back. We want to see." No apology, no explanation, just a declaration, like returning to claim a suitcase. I didn't answer. 3 days later, they knocked on my door. Sandra wore an expensive scarf. Talbot's sunglasses sat on his head like a crown. They looked tan and rested, the kind of rested only people without responsibilities can be. I opened the door just wide enough for their plans to hit the threshold and stop. "You look tired," Sandra said, gliding past. Me anyway. "Still working that part-time job?" Talbot followed, arms crossed, eyes scanning the room. "We were surprised you didn't reach out, thought you'd have questions, but I guess not everyone is cut out for parenting." I let them talk. Sandra went to Ara in her high chair, gumming a piece of banana, and clicked her tongue. "Her posture is off. You should do more tummy time." I turned to them fully. "I filed for full custody 3 weeks ago." They froze. "I submitted the bank transfers, the forged power of attorney, your months of travel plans, and proof you didn't tell me you were leaving the country. I also have recorded calls confirming I didn't agree to long-term guardianship." Talbot's jaw shifted. "Danica, no need to escalate." Sandra took a step closer. "Let's not make this ugly." "It's been ugly," I said. "I just stopped pretending it wasn't." No one spoke. Sandra's eyes hardened the way I grew up, watching. Talbot sighed, reciting disappointment like a rehearsal. "We should go," he said. I nodded and opened the door. Sandra turned at the threshold. "You always envied your sister," she said, low and sharp. "You waited for a way to punish us for loving her more." I didn't answer. I didn't flinch. I shut the door, turned the lock, and exhaled. Ara dropped her banana and clapped. That afternoon, Ephraim called. Our court date was moved up. The courtroom smelled like dust and wood polish. Everything felt too bright. Ephraim walked steady, carrying our binder like a book of truth. I sat beside him, hands folded, watching the judge's eyes more than I watched my parents. Sandra and Talbot arrived 10 minutes late. My sister never showed. Never. Ephraim opened with the timeline, then laid out the notarized transfer, the months of planned travel, the drained shared fund wired offshore. He played the recording, my sister's voice, cool and dismissive, confirming I never agreed to guardianship. He handed up a transcript. Sandra cleared her throat a few times. Talbot smirked now and then. They didn't deny. They reframed. "My daughter is prone to exaggeration," Sandra said smoothly. "She's under strain. Caring for a child that isn't hers is emotional." The judge didn't blink. "I've reviewed the documentation," she said, calm but firm. "The concern here is not just abandonment, but the strategic nature of the transfer. Ms. Quinn was misled and left without support, financially and emotionally." She looked straight at my parents. "Full legal custody is granted to Ms. Quinn. The offshore account is frozen pending review. Any visitation from Sandra or Talbot Quinn must be supervised and approved in advance. Sandra opened her mouth. The judge raised a hand. We're done. Outside, the wind picked up. Sandra caught me on the steps. You were always jealous of your sister, she hissed. Even as a child, you waited for this. I looked at her and said nothing. She turned away. Talbot followed silently. I walked to the lot where Ara waited with Mrs. Arles, who had come without being asked. The baby reached for me, laughing. That night, as I rocked her to sleep, I didn't feel relief. Just a hollow stillness, like the end of a long echo. In the morning, an email from Ephraim pinged, urgent. The kiln hums now, low and steady. I keep it warm most mornings while Ara plays on the quilted mat a few feet away. The little cradle I built from old pine sits beside a shelf of finished bowls. She naps there sometimes, hand around the cloth doll Mrs. Arles sewed. My hands are back in clay. The wheel spins. I open the studio 2 days a week, sometimes 3 when she's settled. Orders are slow but steady. The cafe refilled their mug shelf last month, and a college student wants a custom set for her thesis show. I take what I can and let the rest pass. Every Friday, Mrs. Arles brings oatmeal cookies wrapped in wax paper. She never stays long, just a check-in and a squeeze on my arm before she disappears down the sidewalk. Her presence is its own kind of medicine. Quiet, reliable, the opposite of what I learned to expect from adults. Sometimes I still wake waiting for a new message or twist, but months have gone by and the silence has settled into something I can live with. The legal follow-ups are mostly finished. The account is still frozen. No word from my sister. I stopped waiting. Last week, Ara took 3 wobbly steps between the work table and the door. She fell and laughed like it was a game. I laughed too, then cried in the kitchen after she slept, not from sadness, but because I was the one who saw it. Yesterday, I wrote my sister a letter, not out of duty, just to close a loop. Ara is safe, I wrote. That's all that matters. I didn't give a return address. This morning, I unlocked the studio and set my fingers in damp clay. I looked at the small cradle beside me, the tiny bowl dented with her thumbprint, the faint flour streaks on the floor from yesterday's toddler baking attempt. They left so they could escape. I stayed and built something.